Hi, I'm Eric Siegel with ericstrains.com. Today we're going to take a look at something that I'm sure a lot of you guys are excited about. This is the new 3-rail O-scale Norfolk Southern Honoring First Responders SD60E from MTH. Alright, so I'm going to start things off with a little bit of information on the real SD60s as well as the SD60Es. Now, I'm not going to go into every single detail about these engines because, quite frankly, I don't know every detail about these engines. And also, if you want to find out every detail, just Google SD60 or SD60E and you'll find all the information you could want. Now, the original SD60s were manufactured by EMD between 1984 and 1995, and they were very successful. There were over 1,100 SD60s manufactured. The Union Pacific was the largest owner with 281, but the Norfolk Southern also had quite a lot of these. Now, the SD60E is a rebuild program that Norfolk Southern is undertaking to upgrade and modernize their fleet of SD60s. They've got 160 SD60s in their fleet, and they are slowly modernizing all of them to SD60Es. And the upgrades include electronic control upgrades, crash worthiness upgrades. There's a horsepower upgrade because there's a new prime mover involved. And there's also a new cab involved. That's why this cab looks kind of different and unique, because that is a Norfolk Southern specialty. It's called a crescent type cab. Now, at this time, Norfolk Southern has about 100 SD60Es in service. Most of those have the traditional Norfolk Southern black and white horsehead paint scheme, but 3 of the SD60Es have special paint schemes, and of course those have caught the attention of rail fans everywhere. One of them is the Honoring First Responders paint scheme, which is what we have here. Now, originally this engine was supposed to have a road number of 7003, but when they did the special Honoring First Responders paint scheme, they changed the road number to 911. There's also an Honoring Our Veterans paint scheme, which has a road number of 6920, and then there's a Go Rail paint scheme, which has a road number of 6963. Now, fortunately for us, all 3 of these paint schemes, as well as the traditional black and white paint scheme, are being modeled in O-scale. So now let's talk about the O-scale models of the SD60E. Both MTH and Lionel have offered models of all 4 paint schemes for the SD60E. Now, interestingly, Lionel actually cataloged their SD60Es first, but MTH actually ended up delivering theirs before Lionel. So because the Lionel versions were cataloged first, I actually ordered those versions, and I had not intended on ordering the MTH versions because I figured that that would be redundant. But a couple weeks ago, I was over at Legacy Station for a demonstration of the MTH Wi-Fi system, and the demonstration was being done by none other than Mike Wolf, the founder of MTH. So I got there early, and I got to talk to Mike Wolf, and he's a great guy. We had a lot of fun. And while I was there, I saw one of these sitting on the shelf, and I thought, my God, that's a beautiful engine. So I put it on the test track, and it sounded great and ran great. And I figured, you know what, I'm going to pick one of these up just to check it out. And what better time to buy an MTH engine than with Mike Wolf sitting 2 feet away. And so I picked it up, and since Mike Wolf was there, I had him autograph the box, and I got my picture taken with him. And so for that reason, this engine will always be special to me because it's the engine that I got autographed by Mike Wolf. So as it turns out now, I'm going to have both the MTH and Lionel versions of the SD60E. Now on the Lionel side, I've ordered 3 of these. I ordered the First Responders version, the Veterans version, and the Go Rail version. And then on the MTH side, I've got this one, of course, and I will probably pick up the Veterans version as well at some point in time, although I will not be reviewing that engine because it's basically the same as this engine. It just has a different paint scheme and maybe some different crew talk. But when the Lionel SD60s come in, I will review one of those, most likely the First Responders version. That way we can have some fun comparing and contrasting the two models of the same engine. That'll be a lot of fun. But you know, people always ask me, which one's better? Which one's better, MTH or Lionel? And I always tell them, neither. They both have qualities in their favor, and in the end, it really comes down to personal preference and money. Obviously, when it comes to affordability, MTH usually has the upper hand, but it's basically going to be a win-win scenario. Both the Lionel and the MTH models of the SD60E are going to be wonderful models, and it's going to be fun to have them both on the layout and to be able to compare and contrast them. So anyway, what we're going to do right now is go over some of the stats and facts on this model. Then we'll go in for a closer look at some of the details, and then we'll wrap things up by taking this engine for a spin around the layout. So let's get started. Alright, so the length of this engine is right at 17 inches. It's about 18.5 inches if you count the couplers. The weight of the engine is 5 pounds 10 ounces. This engine has right at 2 pounds of pulling power, which is pretty good for a diesel. And the minimum required curve needed to operate this engine is 0.36, so this engine is actually very friendly to layouts with tight curves. On the inside, this engine is driven by 2 flywheel motors. There's also a fan-driven smoke unit on the inside. All of the lighting on this engine is LED lighting, and this engine also features the latest Proto-Sound 3.0 system with MTH's digital command system as well. Now, this engine is Proto-Scale 3.2 compatible. That means that it can be converted from 3-rail operation to 2-rail operation if you choose to do so. And because of that, there is also a DCC decoder on board. There are 3 ways to operate this engine. The preferred method is to use MTH's Digital Command System, or DCS, as that will give you access to all of the engine's advanced features. However, you can also run this engine conventionally with just a transformer and some track, or if you choose to operate this engine as a 2-rail model, you can run it with DCC. So here's a look at the front of the engine. On the Pilot, we've got this plow attachment, and this piece is packaged separately with the engine when you buy it, so you can attach it to either the front or the back of the engine with a couple of screws on the underside. In the middle, we've got the proto-coupler that can be thrown from the DCS remote. We've got some MU hoses behind the plow piece and a separately applied coupler cut bar. On the steps, they have drainage holes, which is always nice. We've got some legible signage here. As I said, the paint job on this engine is fantastic, and you can see the start of it here on the front. It looks awesome. We've got some separately applied metal grab irons on either side, and there's a whole bunch going up this side. There's a metal chain in between the handrails, which are also made of metal. We've got operating ditch lights down here. All the walkways on this engine have safety tread, and then here in the middle there's a door, but that door does not open, it's molded into the body. Moving up, we've got a couple of sand fill caps and some add-on metal grab irons on the hood. We've got some separately applied windshield wipers on the windows. We've got a couple more grab irons up here above the number boards. These number boards are lighted, and there's an operating headlight in the middle. And overall, I really like this part of the engine. The fact that it has this overhang hanging over the windows just gives this engine a totally different look than most other diesels out there. It's really cool. As we move around and take a look at the underside, you can see we've got some very nicely detailed truck side frames here. And then we've got the fuel tank area, which contains the speaker, which we'll see later. And of course, we've got some hand-painted detailing on the fuel tank area, which is a nice touch. As we swing around the backside, you can see we've got another set of ditch lights back here. And then on the rear Pilot, because we do not have a plow attachment back here, we can get a better look at the MU hose detailing and so forth. And then of course in the middle, we've got another proto-coupler that can be thrown from the DCS remote. Moving up on the back of the engine, we've got a sand fill cap, an operating headlight, we've got lots of separately applied metal grab irons, and then a couple of number boards, although these are not illuminated. As we start to make our way back up toward the front of the engine, we've got some nice see-through vent detailing here, and a nice Norfolk Southern logo and some legible signage below it. And then of course in the middle here we've got the Honoring First Responders mural with a ladder turned on its side and some really cool striping. It looks fantastic. Now this is one of my favorite spots on this model. First of all, we've got this big clunky thing sticking out the side. It's got a really nice see-through metal screen on it. I think this is part of the new split cooling system that Norfolk Southern implemented on these engines as part of the rebuild program, but I'm not 100% positive. I'm sure somebody can chime in and verify that. But you know what? I really don't care what it is. It just looks cool. Then right here we've got this really neat looking screen that's part of the dynamic brake system. Then we've got these great looking logos for fire, police, and medic. And then we've got this nice looking door on the back of the cab. Now the door does have seams around it, which would suggest that you can open the door, but I don't see any real hinges on the door, so I'm not going to try to open it because I don't want to risk damaging the engine. The sides of the cab look great. As you can see, we've got loads of legible signage going on here. We've got separately applied moving windscreens on either side of the windows. The windows don't open or close, but on the inside of the cab there are two hand-painted crew figures, and there is a light in the cab which does turn off when the engine starts moving. Here's a quick look at the other side of the engine. It looks pretty much like the side you've already seen, but there are a few differences. We've got a brake wheel back here, and then we've got this piece over here. It looks great. Up on top of the cab, we've got another area that sort of gives a unique look to these SD60Es. Now, I'm sure that these are antennas of some sort, or maybe some sort of GPS equipment, but I'm not sure what each individual piece is for. And again, it really doesn't matter to me. It just looks really cool, and it looks even better with the contrast in colors. Moving back, we've got a cooling fan, and there is a free spinning blade down in there. We've got some separately applied metal lift rings around here. You can see the top of that split cooling assembly. And then back here we've got the smokestack, and as is usual for these models, there is a fan-driven smoke unit down in there, and to load smoke fluid into the smoke unit, you simply pour the smoke fluid directly down the stack. As we move toward the back, we've got a separately applied horn that looks nice, and then we've got these really cool looking yellow fans, and again they do have free spinning blades down in there, and we've also got some separately applied metal lift rings and grab irons up here. Now this back section does lift off to reveal the master controls for the engine. So we've got the master volume knob, the master smoke volume knob, then we've got a switch that toggles between DCS and DCC operation, and then down here is a switch that toggles between 2-rail and 3-rail operation. Here we have the underside of the engine. There are 4 pickup rollers, 2 per truck for good solid center rail contact. There are 3 axles per truck. All 3 axles are driven. The center axle, however, these wheels do not have flanges, and that is to allow these engines to get around tighter curves. On the inner axle of each truck, you'll find 2 traction tires, and then in the middle here, we've got the speaker for the sound system. Alright, the last thing we're going to do before we start this thing up is BFIMO, best feature in my opinion. And you know, this time around I should probably call it best features in my opinion, because it's sort of a 3-way tie. First of all, the paint job is a no-brainer. It is fantastic and flawless, which is par for the course for MTH. This engine sticks out like a sore thumb, and that is a compliment. There is no way you can hide this engine on a layout. It's great. And then for the other 2 features, those come from the sound library on the engine. First of all, I love the startup sounds on this engine. They are fantastic. They have a lot of bass to them. It's sort of like a sleeping giant roaring to life. It sounds incredible, and you'll hear it in just a minute. And then I also really like the Crew Talk sounds on this engine. They were recorded specially for this engine, and they are great. They're funny, they're clever. Hey, they may not be realistic, but who cares? They're a lot of fun. I know some guys don't care for crew talk sounds, but you got to give these ones a listen. They're great. So yeah, it's a three-way tie for BFIMO this time around. The crew talk sounds, the startup sounds, and the paint job. All right, now comes the fun part. Let's go ahead and start this thing up. Now today I'm going to be using the extended startup sequence on the DCS remote. Now between the extended startup sequence and the passenger freight announcements later on, you're going to hear a lot of crew talk sounds coming from this engine. I know some guys don't care for that, so keep in mind that if you don't like the crew talk sounds, you do not have to use them. First up, let's check out the horn. And now let's check out the bell. Now let's try revving the engine up and we'll hear some of the different RPM level sounds. If you could tell in the video, but the smoke output actually increased as the RPMs got higher and higher. Pretty cool. Okay, I've got some cars hooked up behind the SD60E and it's time to roll it out. Now later on, when I'm running the engine, I will stop and do the passenger freight announcement sequence. So you'll get to hear some of the really cool customized crew talk sounds that MTH recorded for this engine. Anyway, let's go ahead and move it out.
This is Norfolk Southern 911. Let's get some photos of her. Hey, isn't that Whit Mormon, Norfolk Southern's chairman? Let's go over and say hi. Mr. Mormon, I want to thank you for this tribute to the first responders. It's a beautiful locomotive. Sure, that's a beautiful paint scheme. It really honors our first responders. And I wanted to thank you for all you've done with the NS Heritage Program.
Listen, no thanks are required. All of us at Norfolk Southern want to show our hard-working first responders all across our service region and the country that their dedication is much appreciated.
Thanks again, Mr. Mormon. Hey, Mike, let's go get some more photos. How cool was that? That's the man that made the Heritage Program happen.
Alright, that about wraps it up for this review. As you've seen, this is an absolutely gorgeous engine with a flawless paint job. It's a lot of fun to run, and it's got a great sound system. And the best thing is that they've got a whole lot of items to choose from in this series. For the SD60Es, there are 4 paint schemes available. There's the Honoring First Responders that you see here. There's the Honoring Our Veterans version, which, again, I'm going to pick up. There's the Go Rail version, and then there's the standard black and white Norfolk Southern version. They've also put out a model of a fire truck that can be posed with this engine. They've also put out a GP38 in the First Responders paint scheme, and then they've got some rolling stock. They've got a couple box cars, a couple tank cars, and a caboose. So there is certainly lots to choose from in this series, and you can really expand on it if you want to. Now, if you're interested in purchasing one of these SD60Es, the retail price is right at $500, $499.95. And if you go through a good MTH dealer, you should be able to get a little bit of a discount off that retail price. And as always, if you're looking for a good MTH dealer and one that has these in stock, at least right now, try my favorite train store, which is Legacy Station. You can find them on the web at www.legacystation.com or give them a call at 770-339-7780. Anyway, that's it for now. I'm Eric Siegel, and I'll see you next time. To discuss this model or any other O-Gauge trains and to meet other O-Gauge modelers, check out the O-Gauge Railroading Magazine online forum at ogrforum.ogaugerr.com.